Hey everyone, Mike here with another Helm to Tower video. I finally jumped into a roguelite I've been meaning to check out, and that's Hyper Light Breaker, the new game from Heart Machine, the creators of Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash. I really enjoyed both of these previous entries, so I was pretty excited to see what they would do with one of my favorite genres being kind of roguelite games. It also has like co-op and a lot of action going on, so those always attract me, so I was very curious to see what these guys would do with it. They recently released the Buried Below update, which is the biggest update and transformation the game has received since it released in early access back in January. And after playing this, definitely worth jumping in now because I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm going to go over kind of why I think that here in this video. But first, if you haven't even seen Hyper Light Break at all and want to know what it's about, let me kind of try and break it down for you. In a run, you'll basically pick from a selection of different characters. You will have to unlock some of these characters, but they have like different traits and some of their own unique abilities and things like that. And then you'll be dropped into this open world that's kind of randomly generated with different kinds of enemies and all kinds of stuff going on, just different mysteries and things to unlock and discover. Finding like chests and things like that will give you different kinds of currency or like new weapons to use on the run. There's all kinds of different weapons like swords and katanas and guns and different things like that. Finding all of this stuff and kind of upgrading your character is in preparation to take on these crown bosses. They're basically like the major enemies of the area. You'll need to find like some stuff like mini bosses or little challenges in the world that give you these sort of crown kind of keys. Basically, I don't know if that's the exact word, but you find those, and then that'll let you grant access to the boss in those areas, and then you will have to take them on. The bosses change from run to run, so you can see completely different bosses in a different run. Granted, this is early access, so I think there is only a small handful of bosses right now, but it does cycle between the ones that are currently available. And then I think for a grand total of, I think you have to take on 3 different bosses to kind of complete a run. All while this is going on, you're to see a world tier kind of slowly increasing on your HUD, and that is basically similar to a game like Risk of Rain 2 if you've played that, where basically as this world tier goes up, the enemy difficulty will slowly increase, more enemies will spawn, harder enemies will spawn, different little mini bosses could appear that wouldn't be there originally, but I also think the rewards can get better as well, so it does kind of give you that risk reward of how long you want to stay in an area. Also, these shrines you can find in the world that lets you extract out back to like the central hub that you start in, that you can also go to these vendors and you can take any kind of weapons and gear you found on the run you're currently on and upgrade them at those vendors with all like the different currencies and things you can find on a given run. There's some meta progression things outside of that too, of course, like there's like a skill tree you can find and all that, which lets you continue to kind of upgrade all of the characters across the board with different things and stats and all kinds of stuff. Pretty typical roguelite fare these days, but it's all there and is good, at least so far. Most of what I'm explaining here worked similarly in the game previously before the Buried Below update. However, there were some major changes, like the removal of weapon degradation and having these multiple lives per run, so you could kind of keep some of the stuff you had, but it would degrade over time regardless if you like completed runs or did other things like that. Again, I don't remember 100% specifics, but it definitely was like a little confusing, and I think it just led to a lot of friction in what the game was trying to be, and I think them kind of removing some of these aspects was better and made the game better for it ultimately, because now the game is much more a traditional roguelite structure where you have one life when you go into a world, and if you lose the stuff you have on you. So while it does sound worse, like wait a minute, then you just say you kept stuff, but think of it this way, where now you can go into a run and now the stuff you were finding and dropping you can use on that run and feel good about using, because before there was always going to be that degradation on the weapon or the piece of gear you had, so you would still lose it regardless over time, because now it's just on, hey, now I can just focus on this singular run and finding the best stuff possible, and now using that best stuff instead of having this fear of losing it or trying to stash it away and hopefully use it later and then maybe not using it at all because you're afraid of losing it because you're not really making good progress on your runs and different things like that. So I think it just led to, again, the previous systems led to a lot of friction in the game, and I think just kind of taking that stuff out and letting the game just be a more traditional thing was a better approach. And I think, you know, they took a lot of that feedback from their community and in this early access period, so they could kind of fix those things and sort this stuff out. And I think they did a good job here making this change, because it's making me enjoy the game myself personally a lot more. I think this change also had a positive impact on me personally, and it has made me appreciate more of the like moment-to-moment pace that they've kind of restructured the game into, now that you don't have to worry about that stuff so much. And it lets them kind of open the world up a little bit more. And something I really have now appreciated about the game is it feels like the first kind of open world, in air quotes, or open world-ish game that's come out in a while that really feels like it understood, and Heart Machine, the dev team, understood kind of what made Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's open worlds appeal to me, and that sometimes early on in the game, it's just kind of empty. You know, you're gonna run into enemies and you're gonna run into stuff, but sometimes there's just not that much going on, and I think that's okay, because I think that lets you take in a lot of the different aspects of the world and lets you kind of, you know, chart out a path of being like, okay, there's a lot of times in the game where I'm going, oh, I see that cool like crashed ship over here, and there's stuff over there, and usually when I walk over to that big crashed ship in the ground, there's something like there to loot and get. Or here's this cool like giant skeletal structure, this just looks cool, I'm gonna go check that out. And then it turns out, you know, I can go into it and there's a chest in there, and there's just like tons of little fun things like that, and it makes you want to explore the world more naturally, rather than having this fear of like, oh, I might go over there and run into enemies and I'm gonna lose this stuff, and you know, that could happen regardless, because at the end of the day it's a roguelike game. But now I also had that fear of like, all right, I'm gonna degrade these weapons and I'm gonna lose this stuff and it's gonna degrade now, and now it's like I don't have to care about any of that. And maybe like for some players that didn't matter as much, but for me it definitely kind of soured that experience. So again, this is kind of where the game has really landed for me, where I think them shifting the structure of the overall core game to be more traditional in a roguelite sense has made me way more interested in it, and also just enjoying it in general. I definitely plan on probably doing like a follow-up video to this, maybe in a few weeks or whenever I have the time to kind of really sink some time into this game and give some deeper thoughts on, you know, character progression, this or that. You know, I'm seeing a couple things here and there where maybe it seems like some of the characters aren't really that like different from each other, but you know, again, I've not played every single one, I've not seen everything the game has to offer yet currently, so I want to, you know, get a little bit more deeper in and figure all that stuff out before I make to give too much proper feedback. But I will say, just as like a general, like if you were curious about this game and maybe heard some mixed things when it released, I think this Buried Below update was a positive update to the game. I think it is absolutely worth checking out now, and because I'm having a lot of fun with it, so I definitely recommend it myself. It's out on Steam on early access now. I'm sure it'll come to other consoles and platforms later in its release, like probably 1.0, whenever that is. I don't think they've really said any specifics on that stuff, so I think they have. I did think they said there's going to be another big early access kind of update later in the summer, so I'll definitely be looking forward to that now, and definitely going to be keeping my eye on this one more. But that's going to do it for this video. If you've been playing this game at all, let me know. If you've put more time into it and you have thoughts about it, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Or if you're interested in the game and checked it out because of this video, let me know too, and any of that stuff. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. But thanks as always for hanging out here on Helm to Tower and watching my videos. Appreciate you as always, and I'll see you in the next one.